So today, we're going to be talking about what it means to be alive. There we go. Okay. So, let's start. Here we go. Okay. So, for scientists to classify something as alive, it has to have 7 basic functions that it can do. So, here we go. The first is movement. So if something can move, then it's a sign that it may be alive. The second one is respiration. This could be either breathing or cellular respiration, where air or oxygen or carbon dioxide gets taken in by the cell in order to do certain life processes. So the next one is sensitivity. They need to be able to feel when something happens to them, or to see it, or to touch it. They just need to be able to interact with the outside world. Yes. An easy way to remember these is by saying Mrs. Gren, and it is written down here so you guys can see it. So the next one is growth. Either parts or all of the organism has to be able to grow. The next one is reproduction. The organism has to in some way be able to reproduce. In terms of plants, this could be using seeds. In terms of animals, this could be by having babies or laying eggs. In terms of bacteria, this could literally just be by cell division, since they're single-celled organisms. The next one is excretion. So excretion means getting rid of waste from either the single-celled organism, the cell, or by various systems in the organism itself. And the last one is nutrition. So nutrition means that you need to be able to either get food or make food in some way. So it is usually easier to see movement in animals. Oh, goodness. We respire in order to produce energy for the body. Our ears, nose, and eyes gives us sensitivity. If living organisms did not reproduce, they would soon become extinct or die out. And the kidneys excrete a waste chemical called urea. This could also be my spelling is letting me down today. There you go. In certain kinds of animals, this could also be uric acid. Specifically in terms of lizards or birds, if you've ever seen bird poop, there is this sort of slightly liquidy white stuff in it, and that is called uric acid. It gets produced by certain kinds of animals because it uses a lot less water to produce than urea. So if you look at something, say a motor car, you can then decide whether it is living or non-living by seeing whether it has all 7 of these functions. So if we go through the functions: movement, a car can move; nutrition, a car takes in something in order to help it work, so it takes in petrol. The next one, respiration. Yeah, a cell can actually do respiration. it takes in air in order to combust it with the petrol in order to produce energy, and then lets out waste gases. So the waste gases could be seen as excreting. Exactly. Process a car does not show. A car cannot grow. A car can also not sense its environment, so sensitivity. This specific one could change in future. So this one could change in future just due to the fact that people are working upon making self-driving cars, which means the cars will have to be able to take in their environment in order to make decisions on where to go. So this specific one could change. And then the last one that cars does not do is reproduce. Yes, you do now get cars that can realize when something is moving too close towards it and will beep to let you know. But as I said, the specific one process that cars does not show, that is very likely to change in future. So next up, we have plant and animal organs. So here we need to stop and talk about what an actual organ is. So an organ is a bunch of cells clumping together into tissues, and a bunch of tissues clumping together in a group called an organ, which all do the same function. So plants are very easy. They only have 3 organs. They've got roots, they've got stems, and they've got leaves. And with those 3, they do absolutely everything, including inside the flowers. The petals of the flowers is just a modified leaf. All of these things, they just have roots, stems, and leaves. So that is very easy. Then humans, we've got a lot more organs. The biggest organ on our body is actually our skin. Then we've got the digestive tract, which is a system of organs all working together to one purpose, which is to digest your food. And so that is essentially what an organ is. If we go and speak about organs in terms of cells, here we go. If we speak of organs in terms of cells, then they are in general called organelles. So organelles are different kinds of things that cells have in order to make the cell functions work. So the main organelle that we have in plant cells or in eukaryotic cells is mitochondria and the nucleus. So if we look at the difference between plant cells and animal cells, then there are 2 main differences. The first one is plant cells have something called chloroplasts or plastids, and animal cells do not. Plant cells have big vacuoles. Animal cells do have vacuoles, but they tend to be tiny. And plant cells have a double cell wall or cell membrane called the cell wall. It's got a cell membrane and then a cell wall, which is made out of cellulose, which we can't actually process in terms of digestion. So in animal cells, it only has a cell membrane. Plant cells tend to be much more structured and tend to have a specific shape, and it keeps that shape even if separated from the plant. Whereas animal cells do not tend to have a very specific shape. It tends to take on the shape as detected by its environment. So here is our differences between. The cell size of a plant cell tends to be slightly larger than an animal cell. You can actually see individual plant cells by peeling off a layer of onion. If you take a layer of onion and you peel off just the outside skin of that layer, and you hold it up to the light, you can actually see little circles, which is the plant cells making up that layer of onion, which is quite fascinating. So plant cells also have cell walls, whereas animal cells only has cell membranes. Plant cells have plastids. The easiest one we know of is chloroplasts. They've got other plastids that do other functions as well, but they tend to be in very specialized parts of the plant. Okay, so this is the main differences between a plant and an animal cell. You need to know that plant cells tend to have a double cell wall, one of which is a cell membrane, the other one is a cell wall made of, goodness, my brain is not working today. Okay, and one is a cell wall made out of cellulose, which we can't process. And then plant cells also has chloroplasts, which animal cells tend to not. So if we look at it in terms of different kinds of organs, now we can start seeing things come together slightly more. In a human body, many cells of the same type join together to form tissues. The tissues then join together to form organs. An organ is part of the, wait, I'm missing something. The organ is a part of the body that has one or more important jobs to carry out. All of the organs work together to keep the body healthy. The bodies of most plants and animals, and plants, are made up of many organs. And several organs working together on one task is called a system, and sometimes a tract. Yeah, you're not the only one with messy handwriting. So, for example, in the human body, the mouth, gullet, stomach, and intestines make up the digestive system. So we need to know the functions that certain kinds of organs have. So if we start by looking at the descriptions over here, let me just zoom out a smidge. There we go. So the organ that pumps blood around the body is called the heart. The organ that makes food in a plant is its leaves. And this is in general. You do get other plants that actually use their stems in order to make food, like cacti. So this controls the rest of the body. This will be the brain. Okay, this organ makes seeds in a plant. That would be the flower. And this helps to digest food. That would be the stomach. So now, if we look at plant and animal cells, which we have just done in slightly more detail than this, we can see various different things. So there we have what a plant cell and an animal cell looks like. So now we can see what the jobs of a plant cell and an animal cell is. So if we look over here, the nucleus controls what the cell does. It corresponds to the brain of an animal, sort of. The cytoplasm is the sort of jelly-like substance that fills the cell. This is mainly water, but it's water with lots of things in it. Then we've got the cell wall, which covers the cell membrane and gives strength to a plant cell. This is the thing that is made out of. Goodness, now I can't remember again. I just said it. Oh well. Cellulose. Okay, chloroplasts are the actual things that absorb light energy to make food for the plant inside its leaves. So those will be chloroplasts. And then the last thing is vacuoles. And in plant cells, this stores water. In animal cells, it also stores water. Plant cells tend to have a much bigger vacuole than animal cells. Okay, so we have different kinds of cells that do different kinds of things. So here we've got a bunch of different cell types that we can look at. So the first kind of cell is a ciliated cell. So cilia or cilia over here are tiny little hairs that cover the surface of a cell, and they can move in order to, if you're a bacteria, just have you move. But in terms of humans, these will typically cover your lungs and your small intestines, and it's either for absorption or it is in order to move mucus along in terms of your lungs so that your lungs don't get clogged. So that would be a ciliated cell like that. A palisade cell is found on the top side of a leaf, and it contains small green discs called chloroplasts. Then we've got a root hair cell over here. So this is what is found on the surface of a root in order to maximize its surface area and in order to get more water to be absorbed. So if you look here, you can see that the vacuole of this plant cell has actually extended along with the cell wall of the plant cell in order to maximize the available absorption area, and so that the water can actually very easily get where it's supposed to go, since the vacuole in a plant cell is where it stores water. And the sperm cell is the only animal cell we have that actually uses a flagella. This little bit here is called a flagella. You see this a lot more in bacterial cells where they actually need to move somewhere. Okay, so I have a very short part of a video I want to show you guys to show the movement of a plant. So please note, this plant is growing, but if you look at the leaves itself, you can see that they are moving around trying to find the spots with the most light. Okay, so let me answer some of your questions that came up. Okay, so the cell wall in terms of plants is needed to give it structure. Interestingly enough, if you look at a tree, then the inside of the tree where the wood is, that is actually just supportive material of the tree. So what would have happened is over time, as the tree builds up layers outwards, that inner section would just be the leftover stem cells of the tree. And so even though the stem cells have died, their little cell walls would actually still be there, giving structure to the plant. So any plant type that is woody or that has sort of a wooden texture would actually have a lot of cellulose, just fibers running through it, giving it structure, but without actually being cells anymore. So let's see what else is there. Okay, there's a question. What would happen if an animal lost a less important organ? Okay, so this depends on the kind of organ and how we can actually maybe replace its specific function. In terms of humans, there are a few organs we can actually live without. The first of which is things like your tonsils, your appendix, your gallbladder, your thyroid, which is a gland that sits right over here underneath your chin. We can live without all of these, and this basically depends on their function. If you look at tonsils, tonsils sit in the back of the throat, so if you open up your mouth very large, you can actually see them. But tonsils actually are a sort of a filter for bad bacteria. And they have a very big function when a baby is still very small, but they sort of lose their usefulness as the baby grows older and starts with developing an actual immune system. So you can very likely live without your tonsils, but it's very ill-advised to take the tonsils out of a baby before they're 2 years old. So your appendix you can also very easily live out of. Your appendix has a function, despite what everyone says. So what your appendix does is it will actually keep a sample of the probiotics, the good bacteria in your gut. And then if you get very sick, and like with a stomach bug, and you just keep vomiting and having lots of diarrhea, then afterwards, once the whole stomach bug is done, your appendix will open up and let out that little sample of gut bacteria that it kept in order to repopulate your gut with good bacteria. Nowadays, you can completely live without that because we've got probiotics that you can literally go buy at the pharmacy in order to do that exact same function. So depending upon the organ, it's fairly easy to live without. It just takes either some adjusting on the part of the body, or we need to replace its function with something external. So let's continue on. An ovum is a specific kind of cell. So we get two kinds of essentially sex cells in animals and as well as plants. So the one kind is an ovum in animals and an ovule in plants. And this is essentially where a new organism is going to grow. So an ovum in terms of animals would be the sort of egg cell that you would have that can then combine with a sperm cell in order to make a baby. Okay. The cell walls in plant cells are used to keep a plant upright. Because plants don't have either an internal or an external skeletal structure, they rely on the cells themselves to keep it upright. Enrico, I am remarkably sorry to hear about your dog. That is very sad. I have a cat that is blind, and she's an absolute sweetheart, but it's very sad. Okay. Plant cells are larger than animal cells, specifically for the reason that they have a cell wall. If they have a cell wall, they can literally build larger cells because they've got a supportive structure around the cell. Whereas with animals, we don't rely on our cells to keep us up. We rely on some kind of structure that are made. So in terms of animals, we've got bones on the inside, or crabs have a shell, things like that. So that is what would keep them up. So the cells itself doesn't need to do that job. Where you go? Can you live without a spleen? I'm assuming that's a spleen. I am not sure whether you can live without your spleen. I will have to go look that up. So let me go on with different organs that you can live without. So other organs that you can live without is your gallbladder. So what happens with your gallbladder is your liver will produce gall slowly throughout the day, and it will get stored in your gallbladder. And then when you actually take in food, your gallbladder would squeeze out some of that bile that was made, and that would then start digesting the food. So what would happen in the human body if your gallbladder is taken out, like due to gallstones or something, is your body will learn a rhythm. Your brain would realize that you eat, well, at breakfast and at lunch and at dinner, or at certain times of the day. And it would tell your liver to make more bile at certain times of the day for about an hour before you would actually eat. So let me show you a picture of tonsils. So main screen, here we go. Okay. Okay, so if you look over here, your tonsils are actually right over here. And tonsils are essentially a kind of filter for bad bacteria that comes in through the mouth. And it is remarkably important in terms of babies. So what it would do with the bad bacteria is it would actually cover it in sort of like a calcium-y layer in order to neutralize it. And then that would form little tonsil stones, which can then be either taken out or something like that. There you can actually see a little tonsil stone, which is not very great. Yes. So tonsils have a very important function in babies. They're little filters for whatever comes in through your mouth. You cannot physically live without your skin. Your skin is the only barrier that your body has to outside influences. So you come into contact with bad bacteria the whole time, and your skin is actually the only thing that stops that from affecting you. You have skin at more places than just your skin. You have skin going straight through, all the way through your digestive tract. And it's exactly the same kind of skin. Yes, it would be quite painful to live without skin. Another organ that you can live without is your thyroid, which is the gland that sits right over here. And how you can live without it is the thyroid actually just makes certain kinds of hormones that regulate certain processes in your body. And so doctors have figured out exactly how much and of what kind of hormone the thyroid makes. So if your thyroid is completely inactive and needs to be taken out, then you just literally take a tablet every day that has that hormones in, that will then ensure that these processes continue in your body.